In the stillness of the night, when the world has surrendered to darkness and silence hangs heavy in the air, have you ever found yourself staring into the emptiness, feeling a quiet ache deep within your chest? A whisper of unease that you cannot quite place, a sense that something is missing, but you cannot name it. You look at your life, the choices you've made, the dreams you've chased, the people you've loved and lost, and you wonder, is this it? Is this who I am meant to be? But the more you search for answers, the more you find yourself tangled in an invisible web, a web spun by the expectations of others, by your own fears, by the weight of memories you cannot escape. What if I told you that your entire life has been a story written not by your own hands, but by invisible forces you cannot see? Forces that have shaped your thoughts, your desires, your very sense of self. What if I told you that the life you are living is not even your own? Pause for a moment and let that sink in. Since the day you were born, you have been handed a script written by the voices of your parents, the judgments of society, the silent weight of culture. You were taught who you should be, how you should act, what you must achieve to be worthy. You were given a name, an identity, a role to play, and you stepped onto the stage of life without ever questioning who wrote the script you are following. But what if that script is a lie? What if everything you believe about yourself is a mask you have worn for so long that you have forgotten the face beneath it? You see, we live in a world where we are taught to believe that our worth is measured by what we achieve, by how others see us, by the roles we play. We wear these masks, the mask of success, the mask of strength, the mask of perfection, but behind them, we are empty, lost, and disconnected from our true selves. Have you ever wondered why you feel anxious, even when nothing is wrong? Why you feel lonely, even when surrounded by people? Why you feel a deep sadness, even when life seems perfect on the outside? It is because you are living a life that is not your own. You are living a life directed by the voices of fear, of doubt, of shame, voices that do not belong to you. But there is something they never told you. There is a truth so powerful that it can shatter the prison of your mind and set you free. And that truth is this: you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not the story you tell yourself. You are the awareness behind it all. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe in. Feel the air entering your lungs. Now ask yourself, who is breathing? Who is watching these thoughts? Who is feeling this fear, this sadness, this longing? In that quiet stillness, you will sense something, a silent, unchanging presence, a presence that has always been there, watching, witnessing, but never touched by the chaos of the mind. This is the real you, not the voice in your head, not the ever-changing emotions, but the silent awareness behind them. The problem is, you have spent your life identifying with the voice in your head, believing that it is who you are. But the voice is not you. It is a collection of memories, fears, and desires that you have mistaken for your true self. And as long as you remain trapped in this illusion, you will never be free. Imagine a young monk sitting beneath an ancient tree, his yellow robe flowing gently in the breeze. In his hands, he holds a string of prayer beads, his eyes closed, a serene smile on his face. Around him, the world is alive with sound. The rustling leaves, the distant murmur of a mountain stream, the song of birds greeting the dawn. But the monk is not distracted. He is not lost in thought. He is simply aware. He watches his thoughts rise and fall, like clouds drifting across the sky. He feels the breeze on his face, the warmth of the sun on his skin. But he does not cling to any of it. He does not chase after his thoughts, nor does he resist them. He simply observes, and in that observation, he is free. This monk has discovered a truth that most people will never know, that you are not a prisoner of your thoughts. You are the space in which those thoughts arise. You are not the storm. You are the vast, clear sky in which the storm appears. But how did he come to this realization? How did he free himself from the prison of his own mind? This is the journey I invite you to take with me. A journey not just to understand this truth, but to live it. Because the truth is, you will never be free until you learn this. You will never find peace until you understand that you are not the thoughts that torment you. You are the awareness that watches them. But this is not just philosophy. It is a living, breathing reality that you can experience for yourself. And I will show you how. But before we continue, take a moment. If these words have touched something deep within you, if you feel a sense of longing, of awakening, of a truth you have always known but forgotten, then make a choice now. Hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Because this is just the beginning of a journey that can change everything. A journey into the deepest truths of life, the secrets of the mind, and the path to true freedom. By subscribing, you support this channel, and you ensure that you will never miss the next step in this journey of awakening. The wind whispered through the tall pines surrounding the temple, carrying with it the soft scent of pine needles and mountain mist. The elderly monk, his golden robe gently swaying in the breeze, sat quietly by the ancient Bodhi tree. His eyes were closed, his fingers moving slowly along his prayer beads, each bead a silent heartbeat of contemplation. But within his mind, a great truth was being revealed, a truth that had taken him many years to understand. The greatest prison is not made of walls or iron bars. It is made of thoughts, beliefs, and stories we tell ourselves. And the cruelest thing about this prison is that we build it ourselves. Brick by brick, thought by thought. Most people do not realize they are trapped. They walk freely, laugh with friends, dream of futures, yet they remain imprisoned. Their jailer is invisible, but relentless. It is the voice in their mind that tells them they are not enough. The echo of old fears that whisper, "What if you fail? What if they don't love you? What if you are forgotten?" The monk remembered the days when his own mind was such a prison. When he was younger, he believed that life would become peaceful if he could achieve certain goals, please certain people, or escape certain pains. But every achievement brought only temporary joy. Every praise faded, and every escape only led to a new form of suffering. One day, overwhelmed by the noise of his thoughts, he sought guidance from his teacher, an old, wise monk who seemed to carry the calm of 1,000 sunsets in his gaze. Sitting beneath this same Bodhi tree, the young monk poured out his worries. "Master, why do I feel so restless? Why does my mind never know peace?" The old monk smiled gently, his gaze soft but piercing. "Your mind is a mirror, but it has become clouded. It reflects everything, your fears, your desires, your regrets. But you are not the mirror. You are the one who sees." "But how can I find peace?" the young monk asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "Peace is not something you find, my child. It is something you uncover. It has always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the chaos, but you must learn to see beyond the illusions." The young monk did not understand then, but those words stayed with him. Over the years, as he practiced mindfulness and meditation, he began to see what his master meant. His thoughts were like clouds drifting across the sky, temporary, ever-changing. But beyond those clouds, the sky itself was vast, clear, and untouched. Most people live trapped in the prison of their minds because they mistake the clouds for the sky. They believe they are their thoughts, their emotions, their regrets. They cling to their stories, replaying old wounds and fearing future losses. But the monk began to understand that freedom was not about changing his thoughts. It was about seeing them for what they were, passing phenomena, without any real power unless he gave it to them. He remembered a time when he had been deeply hurt by someone he trusted. His mind was filled with anger, betrayal, and sadness. But as he sat in meditation, he began to watch those thoughts and emotions, like a calm observer watching a storm pass. And in that observation, he found something miraculous, a space of stillness untouched by the storm. He realized that he was not his anger, nor his sadness. He was the awareness that noticed them. The prison was never made of circumstances, but of his own attachment to thoughts, to judgments, to stories. And so, day by day, He practiced letting go, not by forcing his thoughts away, but by seeing them clearly and allowing them to come and go. He learned to see his thoughts as clouds, his emotions as waves, his memories as leaves floating on the surface of a vast, still pond. The more he watched, the more he discovered the freedom that had always been there, within the quiet space of his own awareness. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting a warm golden light over the temple, the monk opened his eyes. His face was calm, his gaze clear. He was free, not because his thoughts had vanished, but because he no longer mistook them for reality. He had awakened from the dream of the mind, and in that awakening, he had found true peace. And now, he turned his gaze toward the distant sky, where the clouds drifted gently across the heavens. He smiled, for he knew that beyond those clouds, the sky remained vast, clear, and untouched, just like his own true nature. The temple grounds were alive with the gentle rustling of leaves, the soft chorus of birds singing in the trees, and the distant sound of a flowing stream. But even in this tranquil paradise, your mind was restless. Thoughts came and went like passing clouds, each one carrying a whisper of doubt, a flicker of fear, or a flash of desire. It was like being caught in a storm, unable to find the calm at the center. Sensing your unease, the monk in the yellow robe approached you, his prayer beads flowing rhythmically through his fingers. His kind, weathered face radiated a serene calm, and his eyes seemed to see beyond the surface, into the depths of your struggle. "Why do you look troubled, my child?" he asked gently. "I don't understand," you replied, frustration coloring your voice. "I try to meditate, I try to quiet my mind, but the thoughts never stop. I feel like I'm losing control." The monk smiled, his expression filled with compassion. "Oh, the restless mind, a familiar companion to all who walk this path. But tell me, who is it that feels lost? Who is it that is trying to control these thoughts?" You hesitated, not knowing how to answer. "It's me, I suppose, but I can't stop thinking. I can't find peace." "Come with me," the monk said, leading you down a winding path through the temple garden. As you walked, the leaves whispered in the wind, the sunlight danced through the branches, and the soft trickle of the stream created a soothing melody. Yet, your mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one battling for your attention. Finally, the monk stopped by the stream. Kneeling by the water's edge, he beckoned for you to do the same. "Look at the surface of the water," he instructed. "What do you see?" You leaned forward, seeing your own reflection rippling across the surface. But the image was distorted, broken by the gentle flow of the stream. "I see myself, but it's not clear." "Exactly," the monk said. "Your mind is like this water, constantly stirred by thoughts, emotions, and desires. As long as it is restless, you will never see clearly." You looked at the monk, hope blooming within you. "So how do I make it still?" The monk reached down and touched the water's surface, creating gentle ripples that spread outward. "You do not make it still by force. You cannot demand silence. You simply observe. You allow the ripples to settle on their own. In the same way, you cannot control your thoughts, but you can learn to observe them without attachment." He leaned back, letting his fingers trail through the cool water. This is the power of observation. To watch without reacting. To see without becoming. Most people are swept away by their thoughts, believing they are the storm. But the true self is the calm witness, watching the storm pass without being shaken. As you watched the water gradually return to stillness, you began to understand. "So, I am not my thoughts. I am the one who sees them." The monk's gentle smile widened. "Yes, and the more you practice this observation, the more you will see that thoughts are like the wind, they come and go, but they do not define you." You closed your eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze on your face. For a moment, you simply listened to the rustling leaves, the babbling stream, the soft pulse of life around you. And in that silence, you felt a quiet presence within you, a stillness beneath the noise. The monk's voice softened. "Observe your thoughts as they arise. Notice them without judgment. See them as you see these leaves falling from the trees. They appear, they drift, and they disappear, but you remain, the one who sees. Is it really that simple? You asked, still struggling to grasp the concept. It is simple, but not always easy, the monk replied, because we are so used to being caught in the storm. But with practice, you will learn to stand apart, to be the sky, vast and clear, while your thoughts are just passing clouds. As you continued to sit by the stream, you felt a sense of peace begin to settle over you. Your thoughts still came, but now you saw them for what they were, fleeting, temporary, powerless unless you gave them power. Every moment is an opportunity to observe. The monk continued, when anger arises, see it. When joy appears, witness it. When fear takes hold, notice it. And remember, you are not these emotions. You are the one who sees. You smiled, feeling a lightness you hadn't known before. Thank you, Master. I think I'm beginning to understand. The monk nodded, his gaze warm and steady. It is the beginning of true freedom. For when you become the observer, the world loses its power to disturb you. And in that calm, you will find a peace that cannot be shaken. As you walked back to the temple with the monk, the breeze played through the trees, and you felt a quiet joy blooming within you. Each step was a reminder. You were not your thoughts, not your fears, not your desires. You were the one who watched, the one who saw, the one who was free. The temple lay bathed in the golden light of dawn, its tranquil gardens wrapped in a gentle mist. Birds sang softly, and the wind whispered through the tall, ancient trees. It was a place of peace, a sanctuary from the chaos of the world. But there was a time when even this serene monk, the one who walked the temple grounds with a gentle smile and prayer beads in hand, had not known peace. Long before he wore the yellow robes of a monk, he was a young man like any other, a man burdened by the noise of the world. His mind a storm of desires, doubts, and regrets. His days were filled with a restless search for happiness, a constant chase after success, approval, and love. He lived in the shadow of his own thoughts, believing them to be his true self. As a young man, he had once been a scholar, eager to prove himself. His family had high expectations, and he carried their hopes like a heavy mantle. His days were consumed by books, by the pressure to achieve, and by the fear of failure. He believed that his worth was measured by his accomplishments, that his value depended on the praise of others. But no matter how much he achieved, he never felt complete. There was always a hollow ache within him, a sense of emptiness that no amount of success could fill. At night, when the world was quiet, his thoughts would turn against him, whispering of inadequacy, of failure, of unworthiness. He tried to silence them with more achievements, more recognition, but the emptiness only grew. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a rainy morning, the sky dark and heavy with clouds. He had just received news of another failure. A position he had desperately sought had been given to someone else. The shame burned within him. His heart clenched with anger, jealousy, and despair. As he walked alone through the rain, he felt the weight of his own thoughts crashing down like a storm. I am nothing. I will never be enough. His mind whispered. Drenched and shivering, he found himself wandering aimlessly until he reached the foot of a mountain. There, hidden among the mist, stood an old temple, drawn by something he could not explain. He stepped inside, seeking only shelter from the storm. But what he found was far more than that. Inside, the temple was quiet, the scent of incense hanging in the air. A solitary monk sat in meditation, his eyes closed, his face serene despite the thunder rumbling outside. The young man stared, astonished by the monk's calm. How could anyone be so peaceful while the world outside was so turbulent? The monk's eyes opened, and he smiled gently. Come, sit with me, he said, his voice warm and inviting. The young man hesitated, but something in the monk's gaze drew him closer. He sat, dripping wet and trembling, his mind still a storm. Minutes passed in silence, the sound of rain pattering against the temple roof. But slowly, something began to change. The young man's breathing softened. His racing thoughts slowed, and a strange sense of calm began to creep in. Your mind is like this storm. The monk finally spoke, his voice a soft whisper. Restless, chaotic, seeking to find something outside itself. But peace is not found in the world beyond. It is here, within you. But how? The young man's voice broke, the pain evident in his words. How can I find peace when my thoughts never leave me? The monk's gentle smile never wavered. You do not need to escape your thoughts. You only need to see them. Observe them, without judgment. Just as you watch the rain fall, you can watch your thoughts come and go. The young man struggled to understand, but the monk continued, his voice a soothing presence. Most people are like children chasing the clouds, trying to grasp them, but thoughts are like clouds, they pass on their own. You are not the clouds. You are the sky that watches them. The young man closed his eyes, his breath unsteady, but as he listened to the rain, he began to practice what the monk had said. He noticed his thoughts, the shame, the anger, the fear, but he did not fight them. He simply watched them, letting them drift through his mind like passing clouds. For the first time in his life, he felt a sense of freedom, not because the thoughts disappeared, but because he no longer believed they defined him. Days turned into weeks, and the young man remained at the temple, learning from the monk. He swept the temple floors, fetched water from the mountain stream, and spent long hours in meditation. Slowly, his mind grew quieter, his heart lighter. The restless storm within him became a gentle breeze, and the hollow ache he had once felt was replaced by a quiet joy. Years passed, and the young man's dark hair turned silver. His youthful face grew lined with wisdom, and the burdens of his past fell away. He no longer chased the world's approval. He no longer believed his worth depended on the praise of others. He had become the monk, the serene, smiling figure who now walked the temple grounds, his prayer beads clicking softly in his hand. And though the world beyond the temple walls was still filled with noise and chaos, it no longer disturbed him, for he had learned the greatest truth of all, that true freedom is not found in changing the world, but in changing how you see it. As the monk watched the birds fluttering among the trees, he smiled. His journey had begun with suffering, but it had led him to a peace that could not be shaken. And now, he shared this peace with all who came to the temple, just as he had once received it. He turned to you, his gentle eyes filled with kindness. Remember, my child, he said softly, your thoughts are not your enemy. They are only visitors. Observe them, let them pass, and you will find the peace that has always been yours. You bowed respectfully, feeling a warmth blossom in your heart. The monk's story was not just his own. It was yours. It was the story of every soul seeking freedom from the prison of the mind. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the temple's lush gardens, its light dancing on the dew-laden leaves. The monk, with his gentle smile and serene eyes, stood beneath the great ancient tree, his prayer beads slipping between his fingers. Birds sang softly from the branches above, and the gentle rustling of leaves whispered like a distant lullaby. But beneath this peaceful surface lay the true battlefield, the mind. As the monk closed his eyes, his breathing slow and steady, he was not just standing under a tree, he was walking through the vast landscape of his own thoughts. And in that quiet space, he saw them clearly, the thoughts that rose and fell like waves upon an endless sea. For most of his early life, like so many others, he had believed that his thoughts were who he was. When a thought whispered, "You are not good enough," he believed it. When another whispered, "You must achieve more to be worthy," he obeyed. His mind was like a relentless storm, each thought a raindrop, each worry a thunderclap. He did not realize that he was drowning, not in the world, but in his own mind. But standing beneath the ancient tree, he had come to see a profound truth, a truth that had changed everything. The monk realized that thoughts were not reality. They were only stories, fleeting, ever-changing stories, like the clouds that drifted across the sky. They were there one moment, gone the next, and just as clouds could not stain the sky, thoughts could not define his true self. He had awakened to the reality of his thoughts. He had seen them for what they were, mere visitors, not masters. One day, as the monk sat in quiet meditation, a young seeker approached him. Her face was lined with worry, her shoulders heavy with an invisible burden. She knelt before the monk, her voice trembling. "Master, I am tormented by my thoughts. They tell me I am a failure. They tell me I will never be happy. I try to silence them, but they only grow louder." The monk smiled gently, his gaze soft and understanding. "Tell me, child, when a bird sings outside your window, do you feel the need to silence it?" The young woman looked confused. "No, master, the bird is just being a bird." "Exactly," the monk replied. "Your thoughts are like that bird. They sing, they whisper, they shout, but you do not need to silence them. You only need to see them for what they are, sounds. Nothing more." The young woman's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding dawning within her. "But, how do I do that? How do I stop believing them?" The monk raised his prayer beads, letting them slip one by one through his fingers. "First, you must observe them, see them without judgment, without trying to change them. Simply notice, oh, there is a thought of fear. There is a thought of doubt. But remember, you are not the thought. You are the one who sees it." He paused, letting the words sink in. Most people are like fish in water, unaware that they are swimming in their thoughts. They believe that every thought is a truth, that every emotion is a command. But when you awaken, you become the sky, vast, open, and untouched by the passing clouds. The young woman sat in silence, her gaze fixed on the monk. For the first time, she began to see her thoughts not as facts, but as mere shadows passing across her mind. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. "But master," she whispered, "what if the thoughts are painful? What if they scream that I am worthless?" The monk's gentle smile never wavered. "Painful thoughts are like dark clouds. They may block the sun for a time, but they cannot destroy it. You must remember that you are not the storm. You are the sky that watches the storm pass." He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "And even the darkest clouds cannot stay forever. They, too, must pass." The young woman bowed deeply, her heart lighter than it had been in years. As she rose to leave, the monk watched her with a quiet joy. He knew that her journey was just beginning, that there would be more storms, more dark clouds, but he also knew that she had taken the first step. She had awakened to the reality of her thoughts. And so, the monk continued his daily walk among the temple gardens, his prayer beads clicking softly, his smile gentle and warm. But his life was not without thoughts, without emotions. He still felt joy and sorrow, hope and doubt, but now he saw them all clearly, like ripples on the surface of a still pond. When anger arose, he did not fight it. He watched it, like a traveler observing a passing storm. When sadness visited, he did not push it away. He welcomed it like an old friend, knowing it would not stay forever. His mind was no longer a prison, but an open field, where thoughts could come and go without causing suffering. And in this awakening, the monk found a peace that could not be shaken. For you, dear listener, the monk's wisdom is an invitation to see your thoughts as they are, stories, not truths, to remember that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them, and in that awareness, you are already free. The monk's footsteps were slow and deliberate, his sandals brushing against the stone path that wound through the temple gardens. The world around him was alive. The leaves whispered in the breeze. The birds wove melodies into the morning air, and the distant mountains stood as silent guardians. But in the monk's heart, there was a vast, unshakable stillness, a peace that did not depend on the beauty of the world, nor could it be shaken by its chaos. This stillness was not something the monk was born with. It was something he had discovered, or perhaps, something he had remembered, for it was always there, hidden beneath the noise of his mind, like the calm depths beneath a stormy sea. The key to this stillness was simple, yet profound. He had become the observer of his own mind. Long ago, before his robes had faded to their soft, worn gold, before his face bore the gentle lines of age, the monk had been a man like any other, a prisoner of his thoughts. Each emotion, each impulse seemed to drag him in a new direction. Anger would flare, and he would lash out. Doubt would whisper, and he would hesitate. Desire would rise, and he would chase it. He was like a leaf caught in the wind, helpless against the storm of his own mind. But everything changed on the day he met his first teacher, a kind, elderly monk who seemed to carry the calm of the mountains within his very being. That teacher had spoken only a few words, but they had been enough to shatter the monk's illusions. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them. At first, the young monk had not understood. But Master, my thoughts are so loud, so overwhelming. How can I be separate from them? The teacher had smiled, his eyes warm and clear. Tell me, when you stand by the river and watch the water flow, do you believe that you are the river? The young monk had shaken his head. Of course not, Master. I am simply watching it. The teacher's smile widened. And so it is with your thoughts. They flow like the river. But you are the one who watches. You are not the thoughts themselves. You are the awareness that observes them. The monk had felt something shift within him, a subtle but profound change. For the first time, he saw his thoughts not as commands, but as visitors, guests passing through the vast, silent space of his mind. And in that moment, he had taken his first step toward freedom. Years passed, and the monk's understanding deepened. He learned to sit in silence beneath the great ancient tree, watching his thoughts come and go like birds on the wind. When anger rose within him, he did not resist it. He simply noticed it. Oh, here is anger. I see you. And in that simple act of observation, the anger lost its power. It was no longer a storm, but a passing cloud. When fear whispered in his heart, telling him he was not enough, the monk smiled gently. Oh, here is fear. I see you. He did not push it away, nor did he cling to it. He simply allowed it to be, until it faded on its own. The monk had discovered that true freedom was not about controlling his thoughts, but about witnessing them without attachment. He was the sky, vast and clear, and his thoughts were only clouds. They could come and go, but they could not touch the sky itself. One day, a young man came to the temple, his face lined with worry, his hands trembling. Master, I cannot find peace. My thoughts torment me day and night. I try to silence them, but they only grow louder. Please, help me. The monk led the young man to the river that ran beside the temple. The water flowed clear and calm, reflecting the blue sky above. Look into the river, the monk said. What do you see? I see the sky, the trees, and myself, the young man replied. The monk reached down, stirring the water with his hand. Instantly, the reflection shattered, the image distorted. And now? The monk asked. I see only ripples, chaos, the young man whispered. The monk withdrew his hand, allowing the water to settle. Slowly, the reflection returned, clear and serene. This is your mind, the monk said softly. When you fight your thoughts, when you try to silence them, you stir the water. But when you simply observe, without judgment, the mind becomes clear on its own. The young man stared at the river, his troubled expression softening. But Master, how do I become the observer? How do I stop getting lost in my thoughts? The monk raised his prayer beads, letting them slip one by one through his fingers. Practice, he whispered. Each time a thought arises, do not fight it, do not follow it, simply notice. Say to yourself, oh, here is a thought, here is an emotion, and then, let it pass. Remember, you are the sky, thoughts are only the clouds. The young man bowed deeply, a gentle smile touching his lips. For the first time in years, His heart felt lighter. As the young man departed, the monk continued his walk through the gardens. His gaze soft, his smile serene. He knew that the young man's journey was just beginning, that there would be storms, doubts, and fears. But he also knew that if the young man remembered the simple truth, I am the observer, not the thoughts, he would always find his way back to peace. For you, dear listener, the monk's wisdom is an invitation to remember that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that sees them. When anger rises, do not fight it, simply notice it. When fear whispers, do not run, simply observe it. Each time you become the observer, you reclaim your power. You become the sky, vast and clear, untouched by the passing clouds. This is the key to freedom, not in controlling life, but in observing it with clarity and compassion. Not in being perfect, but in being present. The monk sat beneath the shade of the ancient tree, his fingers gently moving along the beads of his prayer necklace. One by one, the sun cast a warm, dappled light on the garden around him, where the breeze played softly with the leaves, creating a quiet, melodic rustle. In this tranquil space, his mind was as clear as the sky above, vast, open, and untouched by the passing clouds. But it hadn't always been this way. There had been a time when his mind was like a storm, each thought crashing like thunder, each emotion sweeping him away like a fierce wind. It was through years of practice that he had found the calm he now carried within him. And in that time, he had discovered simple, practical steps, a path that anyone could follow to find their own inner peace. Step 1. The power of the pause. One of the first lessons the monk learned was the power of the pause. He remembered a moment from his early years at the temple. He had been sweeping the temple courtyard when another young monk accidentally stepped on his freshly swept path. Scattering leaves everywhere, frustration flared in his chest, and angry words rose to his lips. But just as he was about to speak, he remembered his teacher's voice. Pause. Just for a moment. Watch your mind. So he paused. He did not speak. He simply noticed the anger, like a spark in his chest. He watched it. He did not resist it, nor did he feed it. And to his surprise, the anger began to fade, like a flame deprived of fuel. That was the first step, the simple act of pausing. In the space of that pause, he discovered his true power. He was not a slave to his emotions. He was their observer. You too can begin this practice. The next time something triggers you, an unkind word, a moment of frustration, a sudden worry, simply pause. Do not react immediately. Take a single breath, and in that breath, notice the emotion rising within you. Do not fight it. Do not chase it. Simply observe it. Step 2. Naming the emotion. As the monk's practice deepened, he learned another powerful tool: naming his emotions. Whenever he felt a strong feeling arise, anger, sadness, fear, he would quietly name it in his mind. This is anger. This is sadness. This is fear. By naming the emotion, he created a space between himself and the feeling. It was no longer an overwhelming force sweeping him away. It was simply a passing visitor, and he was the host. One day, as the monk sat in meditation, he felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Anxiety. His mind began to race, filling with worries about the future. But instead of being swept away, he whispered gently to himself, "Oh, this is anxiety. I see you." And in that moment, something changed. The anxiety did not vanish, but it lost its grip. It was like watching a storm pass across the sky without being caught in the rain. You can practice this too. When you feel a strong emotion, simply name it. This is anger. This is sadness. This is joy. Naming the emotion helps you to see it clearly, to recognize that it is not you. It is simply an experience passing through your awareness. Step 3. Observe without judgment. There was a time when the monk struggled with guilt. Whenever he felt anger or impatience, he would judge himself harshly. A monk should not feel anger. He would think, "I must be failing." But his teacher taught him a different way. The sky does not judge the clouds that pass through it. The teacher said, and you, like the sky, must learn to watch without judgment. So the monk began to practice observing his thoughts and emotions without labeling them as good or bad. When anger arose, he did not scold himself. When sadness washed over him, he did not try to push it away. He simply watched, with gentle curiosity. This practice transformed his life. He saw that even the most difficult emotions were not enemies, they were teachers, bringing him closer to understanding his own mind. And you too can begin this practice. The next time you notice an emotion, do not judge it, do not call it good or bad. Simply observe. Oh, here is anger, here is sadness. Allow it to be, without trying to change it. Step 4. The breath as an anchor. The monk discovered that his breath was a powerful ally on this journey. Whenever his thoughts grew overwhelming, whenever emotions threatened to carry him away, he would return to his breath, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the cool air filling his lungs, the warm air leaving. The breath was always there, a steady rhythm, a constant presence in the midst of life's chaos. And in focusing on his breath, the monk found his way back to the present moment, over and over again. One evening, as the monk sat beside the temple's lotus pond, a young disciple approached him, his face pale with worry. "Master, my mind is so loud. I cannot find peace." The monk smiled gently. "Close your eyes," he said. "Listen to your breath. Feel it. Do not try to change it. Simply notice it." The young disciple followed the monk's guidance. Slowly, his tense shoulders began to relax. His troubled expression softened. His breath became his refuge. This is a practice you can begin right now. Whenever your thoughts become too loud, whenever emotions surge like a storm, simply close your eyes and return to your breath. Feel it, notice it, and let it guide you back to peace. Step 5. Embrace imperfection. Perhaps the most important lesson the monk learned was to embrace imperfection. For years, he had believed that to be at peace, he must never feel anger, never feel fear. But his teacher had shown him a different truth. Even the sky has clouds. The teacher had said, even the river has ripples. Peace is not the absence of disturbance. It is the ability to find stillness within it. And so the monk learned to be gentle with himself. He learned that even in his moments of doubt, even when emotions surged within him, he could still be at peace, because peace was not something he had to achieve. It was something he could always return to. You too can learn this. When you find yourself caught in emotion, when your thoughts seem overwhelming, do not see this as failure. Simply return to the practices you have learned. Pause, name the emotion, observe without judgment, return to your breath, and remember, you are the sky. The thoughts and emotions are only clouds. The monk's journey continued. His days were filled with quiet contemplation, tending the temple garden, sweeping the courtyard, and guiding young disciples who sought his wisdom. But his greatest practice was not in the tasks he performed, it was in his growing awareness. His ability to observe his thoughts without becoming them. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted gently to the ground, the monk sat beneath the great Bodhi tree. The sunlight streamed through the branches, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the earth. His gaze was soft, his breath steady. But within his mind, a revelation was unfolding. He had come to understand that true freedom was not found in controlling his thoughts. It was not in silencing them, avoiding them, or forcing them to be positive. True freedom lay in his ability to simply observe them. Like a still pond reflecting the sky, his mind could remain clear even as thoughts appeared and vanished like clouds. He was not the clouds. He was the sky. The illusion of control. In his younger years, the monk had tried to control his mind when anger arose, but the more he struggled, the more tangled his mind became. Fighting his thoughts was like wrestling with shadows. The harder he tried, the more they seemed to grow. One evening, as the monk sat by the lotus pond, his teacher approached. The master's eyes were filled with kindness. Why do you look troubled, young one? The master asked. Master, I try so hard to silence my thoughts, but they keep coming. I cannot find peace. The master smiled gently and picked up a small pebble. He tossed it into the pond, and the water rippled out in circles. Tell me, can you stop the ripples with your hands? The master asked. The monk reached out, trying to still the waves, but his touch only created more ripples. The master chuckled. Peace is not found by fighting the ripples. It is found by letting them settle on their own. The monk watched as the ripples gradually faded, leaving the pond still and clear once more. In that moment, he understood. His thoughts were like the ripples. The more he tried to control them, the more they disturbed his mind. But if he simply allowed them to pass, they would eventually fade on their own. The art of detachment. From that day on, the monk began to practice a new way of being. Whenever a thought arose, he did not fight it. He did not argue with it. He simply noticed it. He became the silent observer. When a thought of fear whispered, "What if I fail?" he would smile gently and say, "Oh, a visitor." When sadness passed through, he did not run. He simply watched it, like a traveler passing on a distant road. One morning, as he walked along the temple path, he saw a butterfly caught in a spider's web. The tiny creature struggled, its wings tangled in the delicate threads. The monk reached out, carefully freeing the butterfly without damaging its fragile wings. As it flew away, he realized something profound. His thoughts were like that butterfly. The more he struggled against them, the more trapped he became. But by observing them, by gently allowing them to pass, he could find freedom. The mirror of awareness. The monk's practice deepened. He spent hours in meditation, simply observing his thoughts without judgment. He saw the patterns that had once controlled him, the voice of doubt, the voice of fear, the voice of pride. But now, they were like actors on a stage, performing their roles, while he remained the silent audience. His mind became like a vast mirror, reflecting all that appeared without clinging to any of it. When joy arose, he smiled. When sorrow appeared, he smiled just the same. He understood now that he was not the emotions. He was the awareness that observed them. One day, as the monk swept the temple courtyard, a young disciple approached, his face troubled. "Master, I am so overwhelmed by my thoughts. They never stop. How can I find peace?" The young man pleaded. The monk looked at him with kind eyes. "Hold this broom," he said, handing it to the disciple. "Now sweep." The young man began to sweep, but his thoughts continued to race. Worries about his future, regrets about his past. After a while, he stopped, frustrated. "I cannot focus, Master. My mind is too loud." The monk smiled. "Now stop sweeping and simply watch the ground. Do nothing." The young man stared at the ground, confused, but as he watched, he saw the dust settle. The scattered leaves stopped moving. The courtyard became calm. "Do you see?" the monk said. "When you stop trying to control your thoughts, they settle on their own. The more you fight them, the more they stir. But when you simply observe, peace returns. The observer is free." The monk's days became a living meditation. Whether he was sweeping the courtyard, drinking tea, or walking among the trees, he remained the observer. He watched his thoughts rise and fall, but he did not cling to them. He did not judge them. He simply noticed them, like clouds drifting across the sky. And in this practice, he discovered a truth that changed his life. The observer is always free. No matter what thoughts appeared, no matter what emotions arose, he could remain at peace, for he was not the thoughts. He was the awareness that saw them. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the monk sat by the lotus pond, his prayer beads slipping between his fingers. His heart was light, his mind clear. He realized that true freedom was not about having a mind free of thoughts. It was about having the awareness to see them without being trapped by them. In that moment, the monk whispered a simple truth to himself. "I am not my thoughts. I am the one who sees them. The monk's journey had brought him to a profound realization that true freedom was not about controlling his thoughts but observing them. Yet he knew that understanding this truth was only the beginning. Wisdom was not found in knowledge alone but in practice. And so, as the monk continued his quiet life in the temple, he began to teach others the simple, powerful steps to become the observer of their own minds. Each morning, as the mist rose from the temple gardens and the scent of incense filled the air, the monk would gather the young disciples beneath the great Bodhi tree. His voice was gentle but clear, his presence calming like the still waters of the lotus pond. Peace is not something you find. It is something you realize, he would tell them. But to realize it, you must begin with awareness. Step 1. The breath, anchoring in awareness. The monk's first lesson was simple yet profound. Whenever your mind becomes restless, whenever thoughts begin to storm within you, return to your breath, he would say. Your breath is always with you, a silent companion, a bridge to the present moment. He guided his disciples to sit comfortably, close their eyes, and simply feel the gentle rise and fall of their breath. No force, no control, just observation. As they breathed in, they noticed the cool air entering their nostrils. As they breathed out, they felt the warm air leaving. Thoughts will come, the monk whispered. Worries, memories, plans, they will appear like clouds in the sky. But do not chase them. Do not fight them. Simply notice them, and then return to your breath. The young disciples found this practice surprisingly difficult at first. Their minds raced, their thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. But over time, they began to notice a subtle shift. The more they returned to their breath, the quieter their minds became. One morning, a young novice named Yuto approached the monk, his eyes wide with wonder. Master, I was sitting by the lotus pond, and I watched my thoughts appear. But they felt distant, like echoes. I did not get lost in them. I simply watched. The monk smiled gently. That is the power of the breath. Yuto, it is your anchor in the storm. Step 2. Naming the thoughts, creating space. Once the disciples grew comfortable with observing their breath, the monk taught them the next step, naming their thoughts. When a thought arises, do not ignore it, but do not become it either. Simply give it a name. He instructed. If it is a worry, silently say, "This is worry." If it is anger, say, "This is anger." If it is a desire, say, "This is desire." The monk explained that by naming their thoughts, they were creating a space between themselves and the thoughts. This space was the beginning of true awareness. One day, a young disciple named Haru ran to the monk, her face filled with relief. Master, I was feeling so angry. But instead of acting on it, I said, "This is anger," and suddenly it felt lighter. It did not control me. The monk nodded. You see, Haru, thoughts are like visitors. When you know their names, they cannot deceive you. They simply pass by. Step 3. Non-attachment. Letting thoughts pass. The monk's next lesson was one of the most challenging yet transformative. Once you see a thought, let it go. Do not cling to it. Do not argue with it. Do not judge it. Simply let it pass, like a leaf floating down a stream. To demonstrate this, the monk led the disciples to the riverbank one misty morning. As the water flowed gently, he picked up a fallen leaf and placed it in the water. Watch closely, he said. The leaf drifted effortlessly along the surface, carried by the current until it was out of sight. Your thoughts are like this leaf, the monk explained. If you grasp them, you become entangled, but if you let them float, they will pass naturally. Some disciples struggled with this practice. Their thoughts seemed too strong, too intense to simply observe. But the monk reassured them. Patience, he said. The river does not force the leaf to move. It simply flows. So, too, must you allow your thoughts to come and go. Step 4. Daily reflection. Becoming aware of patterns. As the disciples deepened their practice, the monk encouraged them to take a few moments each evening for quiet reflection. Sitting under the starlit sky, they would ask themselves a simple question: what thoughts visited me today? This practice allowed them to see the patterns in their minds, the recurring worries, the hidden fears, the subtle desires that often drove them. But now, instead of being trapped by these patterns, they could observe them. One night, a young novice named Aiko shared her realization with the group. I always believed I was not good enough. This thought appeared every day. But now I see it is just a pattern. It is not the truth. The monk smiled, his heart filled with quiet joy. Awareness is the beginning of freedom. Aiko, the more you see the pattern, the less power it has over you. Step 5. Compassionate awareness, embracing your humanity. Finally, the monk taught his disciples the most important step: compassion. As you observe your thoughts, do not judge yourself. Do not condemn yourself for feeling angry, fearful, or sad. These are natural waves of the mind. He placed his hand on his chest. When you see a difficult thought, place your hand on your heart and say, "It is okay. I see you. You are part of me." This practice of self-compassion transformed the disciples. No longer did they see their thoughts as enemies. Instead, they saw them as wounded parts of themselves, longing for understanding. One cold winter's night, as the monk sat by the fire with his disciples, he told them a story. Once, there was a storm that threatened to destroy the great Bodhi tree. The wind roared, the rain lashed at its branches, but the tree did not fight. It did not try to escape. It simply bent with the wind, allowing the storm to pass. The disciples listened, their eyes fixed on the monk's gentle smile. Your thoughts are like the storm. Do not resist them. Do not cling to them. Simply allow them to pass, and you will find that your mind, like the great tree, remains rooted and strong. The gift of the practice. As the days turned to weeks, the disciples found their minds growing clearer, their hearts more peaceful. They became aware of their thoughts without being trapped by them. They learned to forgive themselves, to let go of judgment, and to see their thoughts as passing visitors, not as masters. One spring morning, as the cherry blossoms danced in the breeze, the monk watched his disciples sitting beneath the trees, their faces calm and serene. His heart swelled with quiet pride. They had learned the art of observation. They had discovered the freedom that had once seemed so distant. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting a golden glow over the tranquil temple, the monk stood beneath the ancient Bodhi tree. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it the scent of blooming jasmine. The temple grounds were quiet, yet there was a profound presence in the air, a stillness that seemed to embrace everything. The monk's disciples gathered around him, their faces calm, their eyes bright with the light of newfound understanding. Over the years, they had learned the sacred art of observation. They had discovered how to watch their thoughts without becoming trapped by them, how to feel their emotions without being consumed, and how to touch the depths of their own awareness. But now, the monk knew there was one final truth he needed to share with them, a truth that would complete their journey, the truth of true freedom. He looked at them, his kind eyes filled with both wisdom and compassion. "My dear disciples," he began, his voice a gentle breeze in the stillness, "you have learned to observe your thoughts, to see them without judgment. You have learned to breathe through your emotions, to let them pass like clouds across the sky. But there is something even deeper I must show you." The disciples leaned in, their hearts open, their minds quiet. True freedom, the monk continued, does not come from avoiding suffering or escaping life's difficulties. It does not come from having a perfect mind, free of thoughts. It does not even come from controlling your emotions. True freedom is found in awareness, in the simple, silent presence that watches everything but is touched by nothing. A gentle wind stirred the leaves above them, and the monk raised his hand, letting the breeze flow through his fingers. "Imagine the wind," he said. "You cannot see it, but you can feel it. You cannot hold it, but you know it is there. Awareness is like this wind. It is the silent witness within you, always present, always still, even in the midst of the storm." The monk paused, his gaze soft, his voice deepening. You are not your thoughts. My dear disciples, you are not your emotions. Nor are you the stories your mind tells you. You are the awareness that sees them. You are the sky in which all thoughts and feelings appear and disappear. A young disciple named Aiko raised her hand. But Master, how do we stay in this awareness when life becomes difficult? When fear or anger overwhelms us? The monk smiled, his face glowing with a gentle light. By remembering this, awareness is always here, whether you feel it or not, even when you are lost in thought, even when you are overwhelmed by emotion. There is always a part of you that is simply watching, untouched. That is your true self. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if feeling the depth of his own words. The moment you remember to watch, you awaken. The moment you realize that you are the awareness, not the storm, you are free. The disciples were silent, their hearts swelling with understanding. They had spent years practicing observation, learning to see their thoughts, to name their emotions, to let them pass. But now they realized that all along, there had been something even deeper, the awareness itself. A young novice, Yuto, who had struggled with self-doubt, felt a tear slip down his cheek. Master, I always thought I needed to change myself, to be perfect, to overcome all my flaws. But now I see, I don't need to change. I just need to see everything as it is, without judging it. The monk nodded, his own eyes misting with quiet joy. Yes, Yuto, true freedom is not about becoming something. It is about realizing who you have always been. It is about being the silent, loving awareness that embraces everything without attachment. He stretched out his hand, and his disciples saw that his fingers were open, gentle, not grasping. Like this, he said, to hold life gently, without clinging, to love deeply, without possessing, to experience fully, without becoming trapped. This is freedom. A gentle silence fell over the temple garden. The light of the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. The monk's disciples felt a profound stillness settle within them. They understood now that freedom was not something to be gained, but something to be realized. It was already here, always had been, like the vast sky that stretched above them. One by one, the disciples rose and bowed deeply to the monk, gratitude shining in their eyes. But as they began to leave, the monk called out gently, "Remember, my dear disciples, this journey is not over. Awareness is not something you achieve once and forget. It is a practice, a way of being. Every day, return to your breath, watch your thoughts, and remember the silent presence within you. This is your true home." And so, the disciples returned to their lives, carrying the light of awareness in their hearts. Some became teachers themselves, spreading the wisdom of mindfulness and compassion. Others went on to live quiet, simple lives, but their hearts remained free, untouched by the storms of the world. As for the monk, he continued to walk the temple grounds, his prayer beads slipping through his fingers, his face serene, his heart open. He knew that his own journey was never truly over, for the path of awareness is endless, a river flowing into the infinite ocean of truth. As the evening sun cast its last rays over the temple, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, the monk stood quietly beneath the ancient Bodhi tree. His gaze was calm, his smile gentle, and his fingers continued their silent dance along the beads of his prayer chain. He had walked the path of suffering and peace, of confusion and clarity. And now he stood not as one who had conquered life, but as one who had understood it. His journey had not been one of extraordinary miracles or dramatic transformations. It was a journey of silent revelations, of gentle awakenings. He had once lived in the prison of his own mind, trapped by thoughts that whispered of fear, regret, and self-doubt. He had once believed his thoughts were his reality, his emotions his identity. But through years of mindfulness, he had learned a profound truth. He was not his thoughts, nor his emotions. He was the awareness that observed them. The monk's life was a reflection of this awareness. He no longer reacted to the storms of life with fear or anger. When people spoke ill of him, he did not retaliate. When challenges arose, he did not resist. He observed them all, like a gentle stream observing the leaves that floated upon it. He understood that peace was not the absence of problems, but the presence of a calm mind. But his journey had not been easy. He had known suffering, the pain of betrayal, the ache of loneliness, the weight of unfulfilled desires. He had known the restless nights when his mind churned with doubts. But in those very moments, he had discovered the power of observation. Instead of being swept away by his emotions, he learned to watch them, to sit beside them, and in that watching, they lost their power over him. He remembered the day when his teacher, the wise old monk, had first spoken the words that changed his life. "Your mind is a mirror," the teacher had said, "but it has become clouded. It reflects everything, your fears, your desires, your regrets, but you are not the mirror. You are the one who sees." Those words had echoed within him for years, and now he understood their truth. The monk's mind was still a mirror, but it was clear, reflecting life as it was without distortion. He no longer clung to joy, nor did he fear sadness. He embraced each moment as it came, without judgment, without attachment. The monk's peaceful presence became a source of comfort for others. Travelers who came to the temple would sit with him, seeking answers to their struggles, and he would share his wisdom, not with complicated teachings, but with simple stories, gentle smiles, and quiet presence. He taught them not to fight their thoughts, but to watch them, not to run from their pain, but to embrace it, not to seek happiness, but to discover the peace that was always within them. But his greatest lesson was always the same: you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. True freedom is not found in changing the world, but in changing your relationship with your own mind. When you learn to observe your thoughts without being consumed by them, you become free. In the fading light, as the wind stirred the leaves of the Bodhi tree, the monk closed his eyes. He was not free from suffering, for life still brought its challenges. But he was free from the prison of his own mind. He was free in the truest sense, free to live, free to love, free to simply be. The profound lesson: how to apply this wisdom to your life. The monk's journey is not just a story of spiritual wisdom. It is a mirror for your own life. His struggles, his doubts, his suffering, they are your struggles, your doubts, your suffering. But his freedom can also be your freedom. Here is the deepest truth of his journey. True freedom does not come from changing your circumstances, but from changing your awareness. When you learn to observe your thoughts, your emotions, your fears without becoming them, you begin to experience a profound inner peace.